Señoras y señores, la pelota llega para Yenitza, el tope del área. Yenitza le puede pegar. ¡Gol! De Yenitza para abrir el marcador.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Yenitza Munoz. Today's guest is one of the most respected voices in sports broadcasting.
Ahí está Jacinto con pelota, no hay fuera de lugar, puede venir el pase de la muerte. ¡Pisón del área! Seguir jugando, aquí puede estar el Super Bowl, señoras y señores, primera y gol. Por fuera Leo Messi quiere la pelota, va a quedar para Leo, le va a pegar Leo.
His name is Ramses Sandoval, and he's a national Emmy Award winning bilingual play-by-play announcer and studio host for MLS on Apple TV. Thank you so very much, Ramses, for being on the show today.
No, thank you, Yenitza. It's a pleasure. When you reached out, I've seen your stuff, I've seen your content, so I was excited to jump on with you in what's this crazy moment with the World Cup here in our country.
For those who may not know your story, how did you start into sports broadcasting?
Yeah, so I'm a first generation Mexican American kid. I still see it that way, and I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of my Mexican culture. Both my parents from small towns, small pueblitos, as it would call it in Guadalajara, Jalisco. Lost my dad some time ago to cancer, so I think about him often because we're super close, and he was really the one that sort of put on me the passion for sports, the passion for soccer, for football, and sort of the passion for announcing and play-by-play. He did it briefly in his early years, ran into some unfortunate situations so he couldn't follow his dream. I was able to sort of do that, but obviously, you know how it is, Yenitza. Hardworking parents. It's a classic first generation that actually, looking back today and looking at a lot of the stuff that's on social media, I do agree that it's unfortunately an art form, if you will, that is losing. So, there's that whole trend that, we may be the last first gen kids. So grew up basically in Pomona, California. And grew up in Pomona, California. Like I said, first generation Mexican American, hardworking parents, sort of always knew I wanted to, be in show business. I wanted to be an actor when I was young too. And my parents did what they could to get me into that. I did some auditions. I got close to a bunch of stuff. That was future stuff, right? I did commercials, but it's something that just didn't pick up as I would have loved to. So I sort of shifted into announcing ever since I was a little kid. I would, be calling the club soccer teams that we had. The older kids would be, like Ramses, ponte a narrar, do that goal thing you do. And they would just think it's hilarious. And I would just go on a tangent and I would just start calling the game. So that rhythm and sort of that play-by-play announcer, comentarista, narrador sort of thing always came to me. It was sort of like I was on fire as soon as I started and I wouldn't miss a beat. So I started doing that early on. Did lose my Spanish in middle school. I was glad that I was able to pick it back up in high school. I've said this in interviews all the time, but it's super funny. I used to come home and to my dad, I needed to speak English or Spanish. Spanglish was like, he'd be like, háblame en inglés o en español. No en los dos, por favor. Háblame en uno de los dos. It's something that bothered him. But looking back now, it's important that he did that because he forced me into a wall where I had to do that. So when I got into high school, I had unbelievable Spanish teachers. Shout out to both of them, Grimaldi and Mariles, and picked up my Spanish, went into college, took this exam that gave me like 18 credits because I was able to essentially master speaking, writing, and reading. And from that moment on, I sort of said, you know what, I'm going to shift into this full time. But it's tough, as you know, Yenitza. It's a tough business. I sort of started, trying to take my reel to Los Angeles, trying to find people that would be able to help. But in this business, there's far more people that'll close doors and will open doors, just from a standpoint that you really don't know where to start. So, fortunately, I was able to start in radio. I started in radio with Chivas USA around 2010. I started doing radio, picked up really quickly to where, the people that essentially were heads of the project wanted me to do local TV. So I shifted into El Canal 22, which I hope that's still going in Southern California. They had the home games for Chivas USA. So I shifted into that as the color commentator, not as play-by-play. And then eventually they shifted me into the play-by-play announcer position, which was amazing. And that was sort of the start. From there, many things happened, Yenitza, but that was the start. Radio, local TV, but really quickly, to put it in perspective, 24 months later, Univision was on the phone offering me a move to Miami to join the network, which was crazy because I hadn't even been at the local, Univision at the KMX 34, if you will, in LA. So
I love hearing that because from what you were saying about your journey, I heard that you had a passion for the entertainment industry. And it's almost as if slowly but surely your destiny was just mostly pushed into sports, which all worked out because you have a lot of nostalgic memories watching sports with your father. And I'm sorry for your loss. And I think it's beautiful that now you are working in the sports entertainment field for a long time now, as you mentioned, a little bit before 2010. Yeah. And it all is perfect timing because you look at Los Chargers, Los Rams, and I'm saying it like that. Why? Yeah. Because Southern California is dominated by Latinos, mostly Mexican Americans, and we love sports. We love getting together. We have our carne asadas at our house cada domingo, every Sunday. We are big about family. We're big about our community. And with that being said, we needed more bilingual announcers like yourself that we can relate to when we watch, American football or the international football, soccer. And I love that you were working with Los Chivas and you were able to kind of show the industry of sports, the importance of being bilingual. And Spanglish is very popular. I'm happy you are fluent in Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish myself. Thank you to my parents who also made sure that I learned at a young age so I wouldn't struggle learning later. But when I hear or watch your content, I can relate to it. Even when you get clever with the words, when you say golazo, because that to me is like, oh, I love watching it. It's a little bit of Spanglish. I understand it. It brings the sazon to the sports that I am watching. So I love that you are doing that. And I feel like the timing is right because more and more people, like ourselves or other Latinos, whether you're El Salvadorian, Guatemalan, the list goes on, we relate to your content. So I think the timing is perfect and everything kind of worked out, right? I love that also in 2014, you became Univision's Deportes first bilingual play-by-play announcer. So what did that milestone mean to you?
Well, it's something that didn't hit till after, to be honest with you. Once, I had people around me that were sort of like, let's set up your profile, let's set up your biography. And I remember it was somebody who hit me with it. You are the first play-by-play bilingual announcer for the network. And the reason why Yenitza is because when Univision called me, it was sort of a groundbreaking story. So for NBA, NFL, MLS, all of these major sports leagues, that it's always been, they're always going to be in American channel, NBC, Fox, ESPN. They all have the rights. They're American sports, just how, La Liga Mexicana, La Liga MX will be on TV Azteca or Televisa. But Univision has struck a deal with Major League Soccer, which was a story because they were going to run a primetime game, Friday night soccer, Friday night football, viernes fútbol por la noche, which was exclusively to Univision. What did this mean? Of course, the English speaker was going to be like, well, where's my feed? Because it was going to run exclusively on Univision. And so they needed what was called an SAP broadcast, which is, you're watching the game and then you're going to have the SAP to English. And that's where I came in. So Miguel Angel Garcia, which I still keep in touch with very much today, was the person who reached out to me and sort of was like, hey, listen, we have this project. We've heard you do this in English. We've heard you do this in Spanish. Sort of the stuff that you just said, Yenitza, which was sort of, even I would say in 2014, it's only 12 years ago. And I say it's only 12 years ago because you could argue that that was the case before, but it wasn't. As an example, I get mentioned in social media a lot, or people come up to me like, hey, I think you may have been the first English play-by-play that I heard scream the word goal. Because it would be like, it's in the back of the net, he scores. And I remember hearing you and they tell me, you're doing the game in English, but then you go into a full-on goal, which was always the Spanish thing. It was sort of looked at like, oh, no, you can't do that in English. That would never work. But it did. And of course, just like you said, Yenitza, you have people that are going to love it and people that are going to hate it. So it was sort of a polarizing introduction to the way that I was doing things because, you can't help it. You want to get better. So now I've gotten, and I'm sure you do the same thing, Yenitza, with the experience I have now. And I had one of my bosses tell me, don't open your social media ever if you're live until, you're back at the hotel, you're done with the event, boom, boom, boom. It didn't make any sense. And I follow that rule now. But back in the day, you wanted to get better. So I look at all the comments and it was, yes, 50% of people who were just like, oh, I can't believe this guy's screaming goal. That's something for Spanish broadcast. I can't deal with it. But on the other side, it was great to read another 50% that was essentially finally some passion, some Latin flair. This guy's keeping me on the edge of my seat. I can deal with this. So it started like that. And the bilingual aspect of things and why that became such of a huge deal. Univision was always, really alongside Telemundo, they've been huge for Latinos in the United States. And with sporting events, and you grew up watching Univision, you grew up watching Telemundo, because either, your parents or mom was watching novelas, or your sisters, or you're watching the football, you're watching the soccer every weekend. And even though rights and all of this technical stuff changes, those were always the two biggest networks. They still are today. And so when I joined them to do that, one thing led to another. And then, of course, I transitioned into Spanish, but I sort of became that broadcaster for them. So I remember I covered Super Bowls, and I was doing interviews in English and doing simultaneous translations to Spanish. Perfect. Live on the air. And I remember some of my bosses, of course, they were impressed, but it was something that they hadn't seen before. I was the first, reporter for Univision to cover the United States national team and execute. I remember Pulisic, a 16, 17-year-old Pulisic star, a live translation on the air. So it was, question in Spanish, translate to English till the player understands, player answers in English, you translate to Spanish to camera. So that was something that also sort of propelled me and became my calling card before everything else developed. But when I first joined, it was sort of like, hey, let's send Ramses to the NBA Finals. Let's send Ramses to the Super Bowl. American sports where you need to, dominate English as well.
I love hearing all that. And especially when you're saying that you had the opportunity to even translate for like the Super Bowl or any type of American football sports in Spanish and English, because right now, American football, they're trying to make it international with games in Mexico and specifically in Mexico City, also in games in London that they've had in the past. So they are trying to make American football more international. And by having someone like yourself who is dominant in both English and Spanish, it's perfect. I feel like they're going to be booking you so much for that. But let's jump into FIFA, because right now we are in the World Cup. This Sunday is the finals, and we've come a long way with our favorite teams in North America, with Mexico and the US and Canada. But I love that you have also worked with multiple FIFA World Cups. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so the World Cup that's the biggest stage for us. And I'm going to sound redundant. It's the World Cup. It's la Copa del Mundo for what we do as broadcasters. And for me, I was involved. I did cover. It's sort of been growing. When you started in 2010, South Africa was tough. I was breaking into the business. 2014, I remember I got hired by this digital network, and I covered that in 2014. I was actually in Chicago for that. 2018, it happened really quickly. Next thing you know, I'm in Russia with Univision. So I did travel to Russia, but it was a lot of studio and balcony work, if you will, from the standpoint that you know how it is with rights. If you don't have the rights, you're not in the stadium. So for that, it was an unbelievable experience because we were still able to cover the event. We had we were at their main square downtown. It was unbelievable. It was a great coverage, and it was a great World Cup. In 2022 Qatar, it was sort of a hybrid coverage in Qatar and in Mexico City in our studios for Univision. And then, of course, this one has been very special because I got in the booth, and my passion, and a lot of people always ask me because they know, we see you host, we see you analyze, we see you interview. There's no doubt for me, my passion is play-by-play, el narrar, el relatar, communicate that passion to you for 90 minutes is my passion. That is what my bread and butter is, really, to use another connotation, if you will. So when I left Univision in 2023, I joined Apple TV very quickly with the Major League Soccer project, which is amazing because Apple TV has worldwide rights, which is unheard of for a sport. Think about any other sport being like on one network for the world. It's incredible. And that's what Apple has done with MLS. And of course, the factor of Lionel Messi in Miami, which is where I live now. It's just, I couldn't tell you, it's unbelievable. The sports is growing in an unbelievable manner. And then LAFC and LA and the LA teams and San Diego. The league has just gotten incredibly strong in the soccer specific stadiums and all that great stuff. But, Telemundo called, and I was in conversations with other networks to do the World Cup. Again, it's not something that I could sit here and tell you, Yenitza, I knew I was going to do it, blah, blah, blah. Nothing like that. I was very humble. I kept my head down, and I was sort of like Did I think I was good enough to be in either of the teams to do it in English or Spanish? I did. I did have that confidence. And, I had carried on a Super Bowl. I did the Super Bowl in Vegas between the Niners and the Chiefs. I had done a Champions League final between Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund. We had did the Copa America, which had all those unbelievable games with Colombia, with Argentina. So in the last years, if you will, of being at Univision, it was a very small group, and as a play-by-play announcer, I was getting a lot of the important assignments, which is important. It's fantastic, and the experience mattered a lot. So when I got a call from Telemundo, and they were like, "Hey, listen, we want you to join our play-by-play announcer teams. There's only 9 announcers. You'll be one of them." It was a no-brainer for me. And then, of course, I do have to thank MLS on Apple TV, because me being with them full time, they approved it. Of course, they thought it was an unbelievable opportunity. MLS stops. They take that huge break. So it was a perfect marriage. When the World Cup is going on, nobody else is playing because it's such a huge event. I joined with them, and the experience has been unbelievable. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stuff on social, but for me, the most special thing, and I'm sure we're going to get into it, Yenitza, but you have the Mexico games, Argentina, Colombia, of course, Uruguay, Francia, Portugal, Brazil, amazing matchups that are going to be fantastic. But when I looked at my calendar, I was excited to do Croatia, Senegal. And then here comes the fun part. I did Iraq, Egypt, and Iran. And I can't tell you, the past month, most of my following and response has been from Egypt, Iran, and Iraq. And the funny thing about Egypt is that my name is Ramses. It has nothing to do with, now I'm not Egyptian, but el faraón Ramses, of course. So the Egyptian fan base went nuts. Most of those comments were like, "Ramses, where are you from? And you're a king here, and you're a pharaoh." And so that was sort of a perfect marriage. I had that Egypt-Iran game in Seattle, which had an unbelievable finish. And I had Iraq against Norway in Boston with Haaland. But for Iraq, they haven't been in a World Cup since 1986 in Mexico. And I called their first goal in 40 years in a World Cup. So I sort of put that on social. I did not, it's the World Cup. You're going to get a lot of views, but I did not expect from, Iraq, Iran, and Egypt that response, specifically because I had those games. But it was a blast, because in a World Cup, it's not only those countries that I just mentioned to you. And this coming from a Mexican-American who loves, obviously, La Selección de Mexico and Team USA. And I understand how powerful those teams and the Latin American teams are. But to have that response from those countries, and even South Africa, I call South Africa as the first time they advanced to the next round. And as well, their response was fantastic. Australia's response. It was the most random thing, because the responses were coming from these countries that you wouldn't think, based on where, we're sort of working and how we're on the air, but it's been great.
I do believe the World Cup brings people together in so many unique ways, because people always assume, well, it's sports. If one team loses, everyone's going to hate the other team for winning. Not necessarily. Everyone is in such good spirit to be traveling, to be partying, and getting to know each other. Came together, and people were just so curious to get to know each other. And it was beautiful to see. So there is some magic with football, aka soccer. With that being said, do you believe this tournament that has been hosted here in North America, and that will unfortunately be done on Sunday, do you think it's going to draw USA Americans more closer to the idea of international football, which we call soccer?
I hope so, Yenitza. I can't answer that question, because the problem that it's not a problem. I mean, there are so many options here in the United States, right? And you look at England, Brazil, Portugal, every other country. Soccer is what they breathe. Soccer is what they enjoy. There's so many of these viral videos, of very unfortunate families and kids, and watching the national teams. I watched, how some of these young kids and generations were watching the Egypt games, or the Iraq games, and it's what they live for. And it's every 4 years, of course. And in the United States, we're blessed to have the NFL and the NBA, and you have golf.
We have a lot of options here.
Yeah. There are a lot of options, and soccer, was born late, to be honest with you, with the 1994 World Cup, but it has grown fast. And with Major League Soccer doing a phenomenal job with all of the teams involved, Chicago just signed another star, Robert Lewandowski, and Antoine Griezmann, who's won the World Cup with France, joined Orlando. And we know Leo Messi's in Miami, and LAFC brought Heung-min Son. There's a lot of stars. So from a competitive aspect, yes, you look at the league here in the United States and you say, well, that's a competitive league. They have stars and they have infrastructure. And I think they've shown that for this World Cup. I was having this conversation. I would not doubt that the World Cup comes right back to the United States very soon, because let's face it, from a financial standpoint, it's been an unbelievable hit. Every game is sold out. The record for most attendance was 1994 here in the United States. And now this one in 2026 has broken that record because you have 60, 70, 80,000 seat venue stadiums. And even though, of course, you go play in Europe and beautiful countries like Germany, like Portugal, the next World Cup will be, in Portugal, Spain, and Morocco, aside from the first matches that will be in Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. But what I mean still, that they're nice stadiums, but they're not as big, as massive as these NFL stadiums that you get in the United States. So I think this World Cup has changed it a bit. I think people will be excited. We'll see how long they'll be excited about it. I think that the Gold Cup and Copa America, all of these tournaments that are in between the World Cup are very important. If fans could follow that, that would be fantastic because it makes the road to the next World Cup shorter. But I have to say that the number one reason why people have enjoyed this World Cup so much, it's in our backyard, it's in our country. I think that has been the major factor. So yeah, 2030 will be amazing and another experience.
I also agree with you. The fact that it's in our backyard made it more special. But also I think because of social media, and man, I cannot believe how quick these memes will come out. Even like during the game, something funny would happen. You look at your phone and there's already a meme. Yeah. And I feel like that organic marketing also made people really involved in the World Cup, or maybe become more curious about soccer and curious about other countries as well. So there's just a lot going on with it being in our backyard and with social media just being as wild as it is. But it's all just beautiful that I got to see so many people personally when I went to one of the games at the SoFi Stadium and a fan fest in Guadalajara, seeing so many cultures come together. And we need that right now in these crazy times. Yeah. Before we wrap up this podcast, I just have a few more questions. Sure. What is next for you? What is next for Ramses Sandoval? I know you are very young, but do you ever think that one day you will be kind of like the number one sports announcer? I mean, you're already bilingual. You speak Spanish basically perfectly without an accent. You speak English perfectly. I'm just curious, what are your goals from here?
Well, it's very, very nice of you to say those things. I realize that this could, for people that don't know, especially, it could sound like a broken record or sort of like an advertisement ad, but I've gotten where I've gotten thanks to a lot of people that have opened doors for me, that have given me good advice. I've stayed humbled. I've treated from, the person who's grabbing us lunch to the president of the company the same way. I sort of always been like that. I was raised to be like that and treat people like that by both my parents, as I mentioned to you, as a very proud Mexican American. And it's just, to me, sometimes it's for lack of a better word, between us, trippy to see it because, growing up in Pomona and doing that whole thing and growing up in some tough situations at some point in those areas, even though my parents did their best to give us a good life. And, we were blessed enough. We had our home and my dad owned his home and we never needed a cobija or comida. But I had, buddies who, lived in very small apartments, tough situations like that. And you sort of just think of how blessed you are now. And now with my daughters, I talk to this a lot with my friends, and I say that, our daughters have skipped a generation or something like that because I'm so proud that I could give them the life that they have. But it's trippy at moments. El parteaguas de ahí, Yenitza, is I have that in my head, but as a competitive drive, not as an arrogant thing. I want to be number one. I want to be that guy. It's got to be me. No, it's from what do I tell you? Sort of a Kobe Bryant mentality. I love him, by the way. Grew up as a huge Laker fan in LA. So it's sort of that type of mentality, a winner's mentality, not an arrogant mentality, not a everything for me mentality, but it is in the back of my head.
But you're also very talented. So I want to applaud you on that because you've been doing this for a long time, but it also takes talent and hard work put together. I love that you also have been able to open, in my opinion, many doors for other bilingual broadcasters, especially in the sports. And I think it shows other network executives the importance to have some bilingual journalists, especially in pockets of this nation, like in Los Angeles, or maybe pockets in parts of Texas or Arizona or New Mexico, because it just shows the demand of the community and how the viewers can relate to the broadcasters and relate to the passion we have for broadcast journalism. And before we end, I would like for you to tell everybody about your Instagram handles, maybe a YouTube channel you have. Go ahead and give us your social media handles.
Well, you can follow me on Instagram. It's just my name, at Ramses Sandoval. On TikTok, it's all axes Ramses, which is sort of a slogan that I run to show people a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes. On X, it's also at Ramses Sandoval. And on Facebook, official Ramses. We're back with Major League Soccer now on Apple TV for the rest of the year. We have Leagues Cup coming up on Major League Soccer as well. So you could catch me in all of that on Apple TV. And yeah, we'll be around, and we'll be hoping, to get to that 2030 World Cup even stronger and hopefully calling more games. But yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much, Ramses Sandoval, for being on the show today. As always, everyone, I'm Yenitza Munoz. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Adios.